You're listening to the Personal Mastery Podcast with Ari Baga, interviewing CEOs and executives who are performing at the highest level in their industry, working purposefully towards a vision in alignment with their values, and in a state of constant learning about the self. Welcome to another episode of the Personal Mastery Podcast, and in this episode we have Hugh Thomas, also known as Ugly Hugh. He is the CEO and co-founder of Ugly, which is a flavored, sugarless sparkling water drink. He started the brand in the UK and expanded it into the United States, and it is now one of the fastest growing beverage brands. He is taking on companies the likes of Coca Cola and Pepsi, and he is on his journey to build the next Redbull. So I have him on the podcast today to tell us exactly where he comes from, how he started the brand, and how he plans on taking on these multi-billion-dollar brands. So without further ado, here's Hugh. Hugh, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here, Ari. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Are you calling in from the UK or are you in New York?
Oh, I'm in New York. It's actually 2 years next week since I moved here.
Wow.
But yes, you're correct. British accent. It's not fake. Second year living in New York has been different to the first year living here, as you can imagine. So yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah, so a lot of people know you as the mysterious UK man or Ugly Hugh. You go by Ugly Hugh now.
I do. I think I'm changed on everything now, and I've lost my real name on social media. So I'm this indefinitely.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit more about you, where you come from, and sort of like what your interests are?
Yeah, so I'm Hugh. Obviously, I'm from the UK. I'm from a town called Worcester. I know there's a Worcester in Massachusetts too, but this one's in the UK. You guys say Worcestershire, but Worcestershire sauce is from, so Liam Perrins is made in Worcester. That's about what it's famous for. It's in the middle of the country near Birmingham. I grew up there and then moved to London about 10 years ago, worked in London and then moved over here 2 years ago. Generally, passionate about many things from, music, sports, food, like anyone else, but particularly love the people starting products and consumer products, food and beverage. That's kind of always been a passion of mine in working life, is people making food and drinking packages and trying to change the world for the better. So, that's kind of, I'll be the guy walking into any deli corner shop, checking out the drinks fridge. That's what really kind of gets me going. But yeah, I'm, love living in the US, loved living in the UK too, love travel. So always looking for new experiences like that.
How's travel been for you?
Well, this year I haven't been able to go back to the UK this year for many reasons with coronavirus. So it's the longest I've ever been out of the UK, coming up to 10 months at this point without seeing family and friends back home. And who knows how long it'll go for, but travel's been a big part of the job for me, kind of going to different states, different cities, different regions to launch Ugly with distributors. But this year that's kind of been put on hold. So I spent a lot of time working out of my apartment in New York. I was on the Lower East Side. I've just moved to Brooklyn. So when we were going into lockdown, I was in Manhattan. It was a lot of unknowns at that point, certainly running a startup too.
Yeah, I was in New York too when the lockdown started. I was actually there for like 6 months. And after a while, I just made my way back to LA. That's always, it's always fun to go to New York. Very awesome city.
Yeah,
So
it's great.
you started Ugly in the UK. Can you talk about like the launch process in the UK and then transitioning here in the US?
Yeah, so started Ugly when I was, I had the idea with my co-founder Joe when we were 23, 24 back in the UK. I was working for Vita Coco, the coconut water business in Europe before that. So Joe and I had spent a few years working there together. That's where we met. And we learned how to work in that kind of American style beverage company, just doing it in another country. Managed to spend some time over in the US with the team here as well. So kind of got the bug for beverage startups and that American way of doing things. obviously, being Brits, we couldn't launch in America straight away. So we started the business in London on a shoestring. We were working in our old jobs at the same time. So taking calls with factories before work, after work. We launched in Selfridges, which is a big department store in the UK. And we had one store at the time. We did a small production run. We did demos every single day in that store, meeting consumers, trying to get the thing moving in the right direction. And then we, through that, managed to open up a few more stores. And then we got Whole Foods in the UK, which is like 10 stores, roughly 10 stores at the time. And then we got, through that process, kind of got the brand building online, got some buzz, got noticed, managed to bump it. We actually bumped into some investors doing a demo, which is a good message for any founders out there. I guess demo is a little bit harder to do right now than normal, but we met one of our investors who's invested in us, since the beginning, whilst doing our demos at that time. Have continued to build the brand from there, and about 2 years into building the UK business, met some US-based investors who said, this would actually work in the US, where the market for what you're doing is a lot bigger. For anyone that doesn't know, Ugly is a flavored sparkling water, so in the UK, we were the first. So there's no LaCroix in the UK. That is us. And we're now in about 5,000 stores there. But obviously, launching in the US was always on the plan. It came a little earlier than we expected. Initially ran it remotely from the UK whilst I was waiting for a visa and waiting through that process. So I was doing 2 time zones. And then, like I said, 2 years ago, next week, flew over here with a one-way ticket and a backpack, basically. And now we're in about 15,000 stores globally. We sell online as well at uglydrinks.com. So we actually shipped our 2 millionth can on uglydrinks.com in the US last week, which is pretty cool. And we've shipped to every state and city. So started it in like Joe and I's bedrooms, essentially, in like small flats in London, like 5 years ago now. But yeah, to have people buying it in Los Angeles and New York and Chicago and also in the UK, it's pretty cool. And it's not been easy by any stretch of the imagination.
How do you like demo a drink? So are you guys just like setting up a table and then just like, pouring it out for people to drink?
Yeah, exactly that. So we would have ice cold cans, obviously, because you don't want to warm can. And we would set up a table near the fridge. We'd have product in the fridge, obviously. And then I think somebody would come over thinking they were just talking to a regular demo rep. And then they realized that they're talking to the world's most passionate people about it, who are going to sell them like they're on Shark's Tank. And obviously you convince a lot of people that way to pick up an extra can. And then that's how a lot of people discover your brands. Obviously with coronavirus, pouring people samples of beverages is not quite as easy. So a lot of that has gone away temporarily, but that's how a lot of brands have been built.
Yeah. So from like the start of the business, can you talk about like the product creation? Because like you didn't have a background in like, I don't know what someone would even study to make beverages, but how did you guys like get through that process? Was it just like reaching out to manufacturers, or how did you make it happen?
It's a crazy question because, one of the things that always fascinates me when I see other startups that I'm like, that's cool or that's awesome. I'm always like, how did they even get there? How do you even go about making like a keto donut or like the founder of like a peanut butter and jam jelly sandwich brand last week who like called Chubby's. He does it. I was like, how do you even get there? And I'm always fascinated by that too. But, for us, it was a case of asking questions, joining the dots, and everything in the startup is about joining the dots and understanding what the next dot is and the next dot is, using a network, asking around, generally asking founders who've been there and done it is always helpful, right? Because they were always helpful, and they're always people who got helped up the ladder themselves. So with Ugly now, I'll always help someone out if they're trying to do what we're trying to do. So that's the first step. And I'd say the other little hack we found was I was writing from, I think, my Gmail or my Hotmail address at the time, like some embarrassing email address name. I won't reveal it. I don't want any more spam. It gets enough. But one of the things we changed was we've got a domain name. And I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be the name of the company, right, that you actually end up with. It could be like, I don't know, whatever, like carrot.com or at carrot.com. But I made a little email signature, and then as soon as we started emailing from like a company, a domain name and an email signature saying founder, CEO, or whatever you want to do, we started getting more responses from factories who took us a bit more seriously. And then I think the big question, well, the big thing I'd always encourage people who are doing that is, if somebody says no, they can't help you, or they don't know, ask them if they know someone who does. So they say, sorry, we can't do this. You don't. Do you know anyone who can help? And I genuinely believe 5 or 6 times very early on, the answer to the question we were looking for was by asking that question. So yeah, we still have that kind of hustle to find out. But, you know, I never had any idea how to start a business in America. I never had any idea how to start manufacturing or anything, a website, you know, any of this stuff. And, you know, just by trial and error and pushing yourself to ask stupid questions, they're not really stupid is the answer. But we've slowly got there. But yeah, kind of crazy now you've asked that question. I hadn't dwelled on it for a while.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think like it goes to show like you can get into like any business, like if you're willing to do the research, like you can figure it out. And if you have, there's a lot of people who have already done it. All you have to do is find those people and ask them.
That's like your podcast, right? Like, I mean, you have to work out how to do it, right? How do you start a podcast? How do you record it? Like, you have to do the first one, don't you? And you have to then you do a second one and you get better and better and you join the dots. You're like, oh, that's what I need to do. And that's kind of like starting a business, isn't it? It's like starting anything. You have to stick at it as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. So now getting more into like when you started the brand, was that more like to solve a personal problem that you had, or was that like you seeing like an opportunity in the marketplace and trying to solve it?
It's a bit of both. I think, you know, I'd been working for a drinks company, so I knew kind of, they say there's a Japanese phrase, which is ikigai, right? And it's like the phrase the Japanese use for what gets you out of bed in the morning, what gets you going. There's a combination of like, I believe, and I might mess this up, but like what you care about, what you love, what you can make money doing and what you're good at. And I think, you know, I might have wanted to be a Premier League soccer player or play in like, you know, play in the NBA, but like at the end of the day, I'm not good enough to do those things. So I think, you know, I wanted to start a company in something that I could actually do and like genuinely give it as good a shot as possible. So having worked in drinks and kind of naturally finding my way there became like a passion area, and I became passionate about it. So I guess that's like where that started. And then when you start working in the industry and you realize what the big companies do and the damage that those products cause, I became, you know, very passionate about creating products that, you know, average Brits, average Americans, people up and down the street, families, young people putting in products they're putting in their body. You know, in America, there are, I believe, 100 million obese people, which is a third of the population, basically. And type 2 diabetes is no different. You have most of those people on the edge of type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetic. Similar stats in the UK, just proportion-wise with the population. And that felt like a massive issue. And then when you realize how big soda is and how big sugary soda is, it's kind of staggering. And you're talking about people across this country and back in the UK too, drinking 4 or 5 cans of soda a day. If you do that, you're drinking like 1/4 of a kilogram of sugar, right? And it goes, and it's just liquid. So it goes straight through your body system, spikes your insulin and causes so many issues, makes people feel pretty rubbish as well. And I just became really passionate about that and trying to create a brand that was approachable in terms of the way it looked and spoke to people. And then also price point, because I know that most people can't afford super expensive green juices and super expensive kombuchas. As much as I love those things myself, it's an expensive habit for, you know, families. And I think, you know, getting that price point right was a big thing for us. So, you know, getting to $2.99, which is what our 8-packs cost. So a regular family can pick up a case. And I just think that's been important for us. So that's what really inspired us, was to create a brand that was approachable, accessible, and solve that big problem. And that's kind of where it started from. So, but also love the product myself and wanted to, you know, get more people to try it too.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense, especially here in the US. There had to be a market for that, just because that like 200 million people are either obese or overweight in the US, which is a pretty crazy number to think about. So, and that is because of all the sugary products that are out there. So being able to like have a different choice, like if you want to grab something refreshing, maybe grabbing like a sugarless soda water might be a better option for you. And that's probably one of the reasons why you guys like really grew, as
That's
because
yeah,
like there were. Mhm.
that's it. And hopefully we're just getting started too. And like there's so many products with sugar in, right?
Exactly.
Certainly when you're drinking it, it just hits your body so fast.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but you still got to deliver. And so when someone's thirsty, like you say, and they grab for that moment of refreshment, you still have to give the ice cold can and the colors and the visuals and the price point, and it still has to hit the spot, right?
Yeah.
The people are being used to that sweetness for years, but obviously that's something that's changed now.
Mhm. Now, when it comes to the name Ugly, you had a product. How do you even like? Why did you even decide to name it Ugly Drinks?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, when Joe and I were trying to come up with a name, there were a bunch of stuff that we considered and looked at. Um, a lot of them were safe plays, right? And
Yeah.
I don't think anybody ever won anything by playing it safe or not taking any risks. And
Hmm.
when we saw the name Ugly, or when we kind of came up with that name, it just made us feel something. It made us feel excited, a little bit nervous, a little bit scared, but we ultimately knew that it would stand out and people would remember it. But where it came from was, this was a time when the UK had Brexit happening,
Yep.
and then the US was changing presidents. So this is like 4 years ago now. Yeah, just 4 years ago. And the whole idea of like fake news
Yeah.
and coming through, and I was looking at food and beverage, and I was like, it's kind of funny when you look at the big food and drink companies, it's kind of all fake news, right? It's like smiley, happy people in the adverts, really healthy looking people, and then you turn the pack around, and it's like, wow, this is full of stuff that I've never heard of, and
Hmm.
you know, my parents drank it, their parents drank it, and we're just told that that's okay to do. Um, and so we there was a quote by George Orwell, who wrote 1984, which is, "In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act." And so it felt like it was time to tell the truth about soda and tell the truth about sugary sweetened drinks. And um, we wanted to tell the ugly truth. And that's kind of where it came from, is, we are ugly. It's just flavored sparkling water. There's no other promises. There's no marketing promises that, you're going to stay awake all night. You're going to look beautiful tomorrow. Your
Hmm.
hair's going to be shiny. It's just sparkling water. It's designed for refreshment, and there's nothing bad in it. So if that makes us ugly, then that's what we are. But then since then, it's just given us the chance to try and make water fun. Ultimately, there's fun branding, fun attitude, and we just want people to go, oh, you know what? Instead of picking up that can of soda, maybe I'll have a can of water instead, and it will refresh me. It tastes great. It looks cool. And I haven't had 35 grams of sugar drinking it, so that's all a plus point too. So it's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, and like if you look at, I think there was a stat in a country like Mexico where there is more bottles of Coca Cola than there is water. Like you're more in like different countries, you're more likely to find a bottle of Coca Cola than you are to find water. Like it's so
Totally.
crazy.
And the US has a very high consumption of like soda products, but places like Mexico and other countries around the world have insane numbers, and that just felt like a global issue too. Like, we started in the UK thinking about many countries. The US is obviously, logical place for us to launch, but hopefully we can do this in many more countries as well and solve that exact problem that you mentioned there, which is insane and staggering. If anyone wants to
Mhm.
look it up, the numbers are crazy. It's almost like you can't believe it, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I feel that too.
Mhm. Now, talking about the first version of the ugly drink, were you like very impressed about it, or were you like, hey, we need to make another
Wow.
version? Can you talk
I
more about
think
that?
Well, I think Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn, said if you're happy with the first version of your product, you've launched too late.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. I think one thing you learn starting your own business is that perfection is impossible, and it is never where you want it to be. And you're always constantly dissatisfied. So, if anything, you can never get the perfect product out. And the first version of our product was definitely not that. We actually launched a still version of the product, so flavored still water, and we had a bunch of production issues, some shelf life stability challenges. But actually, what it led to was us moving into cans and carbonated, which was the best decision we've ever made. So quite often problems or issues with the branding, you learn fast, and it's all about learning and adapting either to what the consumer says or other problems you find. And yeah, we've pivoted and adapted maybe 5 or 6 times at this point, which is more than most companies. But you have to listen and you have to understand, despite having a vision, that consumers and the market has to respond to what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like going more into launching a product, like yeah, I talk to founders all the time. Like I don't think any of the like successful one or we're happy with like the first version. Like you have to get that first version out there and then improve upon it.
Definitely.
And especially like us founders, like it's always like we're trying to be like as like very picky, like hey, I want it this way, and we don't want to launch something that we're not truly happy with. But the reality is, you have to get it out there as fast as possible and then improve upon
Exactly.
it. So
And
yeah,
yeah, and
that's
you
a
don't want to go, I mean, again, it depends how experienced you are, but certainly as a first-time founder, you don't want to go too big too soon either, because you 100% guaranteed to make mistakes, right? That's the guarantee. You're 100% the plan you have is not going to happen. So you have to get used to reacting, and the faster, as you say, you can get it out and get people to test it, the quicker you'll make those changes that help it improve.
Mhm. Now, with you starting the brand, obviously going after like the large sugary product brands, like how's everything been for you? Like, what was the launch process like? Because like all these brands are already like everybody knows about them. They're like in every store. Like, can you talk about like going to market with Ugly
Yeah.
Drinks?
Yeah, so the first thing is we decided to be omni-channel from the beginning. So we wanted to be available online and offline, which is what omni means, many channels. So um, we wanted to be available on uglydrinks.com. We're now on Amazon as well. We're also in retail. We're in different channels of retail, grocery stores, convenience stores, food service. But what they say, you can't eat an elephant all at once. So you need to break it down into bite-sized chunks. So America
Mhm.
is, it's a scary like scale of a country.
Mhm.
And so when you're in the UK, you look at it and you're like, how on earth are we going to even give this a go? And you're quite right to say what we can't do is try and take the big companies on everywhere at once. So you have to be strategic and go, okay, we'll start in New York. We'll do that
Mhm.
there. We'll sell online across the country, because that is one thing that's great about online, is you can ship everywhere. But we started in retail in New York, and then we learned that worked. We built the team. We added a few more people. Then we launched in another few regions and states. And I think that's the only way to do it. And through what you just referenced, when you launch somewhere like New York, you just learn again. You learn about the type of people you want to hire. You learn how to motivate a team. You learn what works in stores, what doesn't work in stores. And then it's about refining. And every time you launch somewhere new, taking those lessons on and portraying them in the next place you launch.
Mhm.
So it depends. I guess that's what would you do for a beverage company, but for any sort of business, I think you have to go one customer at a time to begin with, and learn every time you launch with a new one, right? Um, I'm sure you feel the same, right, on your
Yeah.
side. So that's kind of our experience. And one of the great things for us has been being available at uglydrinks.com from the beginning. Has meant that a lot of people have discovered our brand around the country that if we were only available in stores, they never would have found us. So it means we have fans in all sorts of interesting places, which gives the brand a richer community, right? It's not just a New York or an LA brand. It is a brand that, we have 80% of our consumers are not in New York and LA, right?
Yeah.
That's really a really exciting thing about what we're doing, and hopefully it goes to solve that problem on health of the whole country as well. So kind of what's been exciting for us, I think.
Yeah. Now going back to you guys going omni-channel from the beginning, especially like with retail, like not every retailer just like lets in everybody, right? There has to be something that got you guys in. Was it the product? Was it the sales or like the relationship with investors?
I think it's a combination. I think at the beginning is just straight hustle.
Yeah.
So I think knocking on the door, showing up, hustling, working your way in, never taking no for an answer. And I think that's been the case for us across the board. As we've grown, hiring people who have the black book of information and know the people has kind of been the way in. But those first, pretty much every store in the UK we've ever launched was through hustle and through joining the dots, getting connections, getting an introduction here, sending the product there, getting noticed by doing something else. And it's been a real grind, but that's how you do it. Other people might have a smoother ride in, but that's what we did.
Mhm. Now, getting more into marketing, earlier you kind of talk about like Coca Cola, for example, like their advertising, right? Like very healthy looking people drinking sugary drinks, and then you realize like if you actually drink this every day, you're not going to look like them.
Exactly.
How do you convince someone to be able to like even make that switch? If there's like a bottle of ugly drinks in Coca Cola, how do you even like get them to like say, okay, today I'm gonna try ugly drinks because it's healthier for me?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's the big challenge for us to unlock, right? And obviously, we're against companies that have a fair few dollars to spend on telling that message. And I've told that message for 100 years too, right? So
Yeah.
it's a real David versus Goliath challenge. But I think the first thing is that we didn't want to look like a preachy health brand. We wanted people to feel like this is cool, I want to pick this up, rather than thinking, oh, I'm making a boring healthy decision. That's the first step. So the product is bold, the colors are, the branding's strong, and then you have the name that makes people notice. So the first thing is like getting spotted. I think Seth Godin talks about the purple cow, right? Where you're on a train and you're going past fields and fields of cows. And then in one of the fields, there's a purple painted cow. The only thing
Yeah.
you can remember is the purple painted cow, which is why we're called Ugly, because you remember that drink from the shelf, right? And I think that's been super important for us. And the second thing, I think, being at a price point where somebody's not making a really expensive trade-off. So we're always trying to be at that similar, if not the same price point as the regular sodas and the brands we're up against, because then they're not making a decision based on, oh, am I going to spend 20 cents more or another couple of dollars? Am I going to, can I just make a simple switch like that? And then the third thing is the product has to taste great. So when it's ice cold, it needs to deliver, and somebody needs to go, wow, I didn't miss the other thing at all. I'm going to buy this every day from now on. And that's what we spend a lot of time on internally. We do get consumer feedback from our direct to consumer consumers, get consumer feedback from store. We do taste tests ourselves. And it's all about trying to recreate that soda moment, but without any of the bad stuff. So we've been using our direct to consumer website to test new flavors as well recently. So we send small batches of maybe some crazy flavors. We did a marshmallow flavor, we did a Dr. Ugly flavor, orange soda flavored sparkling water. They sell out very quickly, but we get feedback. People tell us they like them, and we're trying to bring people that nostalgic memory, but without any of the sugar, sweetener, colorings, or anything like that. So that's been a really interesting part of the way we've built things too.
Yeah, I think it's a really great way to test out like new flavors through your direct consumer site very quickly.
Yeah.
And I really like the approach of getting that feedback, especially now with things being closed and not being able to do things in person, taste tests, etc. Being able to do that online is really
We
great.
can't go to the lab ourselves, so we took the lab to people's homes, and some of the ideas we get back are arguably too crazy for us to ever make. So there's some pretty creative fans out there, but some of the flavors they've suggested we're actually got in our next batches coming up. So excited to see the people who suggested those pick them up and give them a go and see if they like them. But yeah, some of them, like I say, are totally bonkers. So that's what you expect, right? That's where there's maybe some magic as well.
Yeah. And like in terms of like your product line, you have expanded your product line recently. Was that to also take more market share from like other products that you're trying to like kind of like the diabetes with sugar? Is that like the same approach with like other products?
Yeah, so we launched an energy water range, which maybe you're referencing there, and that's the same caffeine and the same ingredients as like a classic energy drink in a tall boy can, but without any of the sugar sweetener, like you say again. Much of the marketing from those brands as like, cage fighting, fast cars, all of that stuff. And we just wanted to put something out there that looked similar and had some of the similar cues, but then was obviously very healthy for people to drink. But really came again from our community saying, when are you going to put caffeine in this product? Can I get one with caffeine in it? And we've had a lot of people saying they don't drink coffee and they want something alternative in the morning that's hydrating, but gives them the same boost. So we made it, and then we put it into stores. And Yeah, I think Ugly as a brand is meant to be a fun take and a healthy take on a lot of these things that have dominated for a long time, and we've obviously got a steep hill ahead of us, but that feels like an exciting route for us.
Mhm. Now, I think you've mentioned before that you're building the next Red Bull, right? Uh,
Maybe I said that. That's a steep goal. I can't believe I've set myself that ambition. I regret that now. But yeah, no, we are. It's going to be bigger than that one.
yeah, that's awesome. So, can you talk about like some of the different acquisition strategies, whether like any marketing things that you've really done that you saw really help you guys increase sales?
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, being called ugly means that people take photos of it, right, and tell their friends about it. And I think having a product with word of mouth is just makes life a lot easier. And so
Yes.
certainly with these new flavors, when we've created some crazy flavors, um, you know, people tell their friends about it super fast. You know, we've got a bunch of interesting flavors coming out. And I think so. I think thinking about your product and thinking about it that way is important. Obviously, Facebook and Instagram for acquisition have been massive tools for us, and we're always testing different creative. Um, Building really engaging emails has been massive. So we have separate emails. If you're a subscriber to Ugly, we call it Auto Magic. You get magic deliveries every month. You get different
Mhm.
benefits. So you get early access to flavors. You get early access to merch when we launch that soon. You get a bunch of other benefits, different discount pricing, etc. So we're trying to bring people in and keep everybody loving the brand, give them benefits for being loyal to us. So that's a big part of it. We launched SMS, so text messaging, this month, and we're expecting to see that perform really well.
Mhm.
And then we also have TikTok, which we've had launched for a while, but a new approach to that coming in the coming months.
Yeah.
YouTube, influencer strategy, a bunch of stuff that's coming up. But I think really everybody can, we're getting the basics in place can deliver so much. Um, that now we've got, I guess, solid foundations. We can start playing around and seeing if there's things that over deliver for us. So that's now the focus for the next 12 months is kind of playing around at the edges and seeing where there's some interesting things we can get, traction on.
Mhm. Yeah, luckily TikTok didn't get banned after all. So
Yeah, we were worried about that for a bit. I was like, maybe we shouldn't invest loads in that this month. But yeah, I guess there was always going to be a solution in the end, hopefully, which I hope that doesn't change.
Mhm. Now, in terms of like a beverage, obviously like product or customer experience is really important. Can you talk about like because like obviously like in different countries, there's like different weathers and different temperatures and all kinds of stuff. Can you talk about like how you're kind of like I guess offering the same customer experience to different customers um, in different countries?
Well, we had a bunch of issues with that when we first started, and I don't know if you've read about that or if that's just something I now need to admit to. But yeah, I think when we first launched in the US, we used the same box we'd used in the UK to deliver the products, and we'd never seen any damages in the UK. But I think what you realise is when this country is the scale it's at, and flying over it, flying from LA to New York's the same as flying from London to the Congo in Africa. I
Wow.
think when we realised that, we were like, wow, these products are going to go a lot further. We're going to need to make tougher boxes. Obviously, when you're shipping things out in a box that's not tough enough, you have a bunch of wet packages arriving. So we navigated that, and then I think the other thing we had, I think there was a time where you had, 100 Fahrenheit plus in Arizona, and we still had freezing temperatures in Michigan and Minnesota, and so we had product freezing in some states and then exploding from the heat in others. So we
Wow.
had to build temperature adjusted boxes and packaging for each of the scenarios. And obviously, not every state has those temperatures all the time. And it's only when it gets those real extremes, freezing or like, insane 120 Fahrenheit, that we see these issues, but we still need to be aware of it. So now we think about the regions and think about how it's going to arrive.
Yeah.
We have to adapt and adjust. And now we manage to have a good grip on that. But for a while, when we first launched, as Brits, like fresh off the boat, thinking through what are we going to do, I think that was a big challenge, because obviously once you've got people receiving wet packages, you've got a lot of people to apologize to. So we had to ease back, fix the packaging, and our team, team's phenomenal. We had some great help from other people externally as well, and managed to make something that's FedEx proof ultimately. So we're getting there now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, and it's so crazy. Like, these are things that you learn. There's so much that you learn along the way, and that's what makes the whole experience like very fun to be building something big.
Fun's an interesting word for that experience, Ari, but I'll let you use it today. The story's better than actually living it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, being in the beverage space, I know it's something that people are always taking a look at. It sounds very complicated, especially here in the US with getting approval with like FDA and a bunch of other places. Can you talk about like the biggest thing that you've learned in this space?
I mean, in terms of the nutritional side and like getting that approved.
Or like just in general.
Oh, there's just so many things I've learned. I think the big thing is what we've just discussed, is that if you don't put your stuff out there, you'll never learn and you'll never improve. And so quite often, if you said you started a food and drink product and you launched at a farmer's market, you might not have the FDA coming down on you in the same way, right? So you can find out, does somebody like my peanut butter, or does somebody like my apple juice that I'm making from apples in my orchard? And consumers will give you feedback. And I think it's always good to try and, if you ask, they say there's a book called The Mom Test, right? And it's like, if you ask your mom what she thinks about your startup, she'll either say she loves it because she loves you, or she'll say she hates it because she loves you and she doesn't want you to start a business and risk everything. So it's really hard to get honest feedback from friends and family. So the best feedback is from people paying their hard-earned money for what you're doing, whether that's online or offline. I think that's the biggest lesson for any founder, really. It's like, can you get somebody you don't know to exchange cash for your service? Is there value? And if there is, listen to them, see what they think, and then adjust it and adapt it. And I think all of those things come, the FDA, the approvals, the legal stuff, all comes as you kind of build and scale it up. But I think just putting stuff out there and learning is the key. Nobody remembers what the first version of Ugly looks like now, right? If anybody asked you what's the first version of Coca Cola or first version of Heinz ketchup look like, nothing like it does today, right? So I think everything is a game of test and learn and improving things. And I guess that's kind of the biggest learning, I think, in this whole process.
Yeah, and I really love the fact that you guys actually went out and gave out demos of the actual product to real people. Like you said, like, you launch a product, your friends, family buy, you think you got something, but when you usually get completely different feedback sometimes when you actually take out to real people. So that's really amazing that you guys are doing it and still doing it to this day. So that's awesome.
I think that's important.
Yeah. And obviously when you started, you were hustling a lot. I'm assuming you probably still are. So are there like any routines or things that you do that help you really get to where you are today?
I mean, I'm by no means any sort of like role model or finished article. I think if anything, going backwards on many of my habits. And this year's been tough, right? I think this year's been tough for everyone to keep their habits and keep good practice. I think for me personally, working out has become a real important thing. And if I don't do it, which often I don't want to, pretty much every day I don't want to, my mood is totally different. And when you're a leader and you have to motivate a team of people, you have to stay positive and you have to stay at least in control of your emotions. And I don't always get that right. And I think that's something I've learned recently is, building a foundation of like looking after yourself is important. And many times during Ugly's journey, I've not looked after myself well enough. What they say on the airplane, right, is that, put your mask on before you help others.
Yeah.
I haven't done that enough at certain points. But that's the one thing, I guess, looking after yourself, sleeping, eating, exercising. It sounds cliched, but genuinely, a year in, you can get away with it. 2 years, maybe you can get away with it. Year 3, year 4, year 5, it catches up with you, however old you are. And so I've noticed that happen. I think the other big thing for me is just having a to-do list process and having a system where your things in your head are captured on a piece of paper. For me, it's paper. I've tried using Notion and everything. I get the most out of me when I have the pen in my hand, and it's also almost like my brain connecting with my hand and just getting it out of my head. You get everything on your mind out of your head onto a piece of paper, and then you can prioritize what the most important things are. I'd say that's almost the number one thing for me has been, there's so many ideas. I have so many ideas, almost too many sometimes, just to get them on a piece of paper so they're captured somewhere. They're not gone anywhere. You've not lost the idea. You're not relying on your memory. I think that's been a big thing for me, certainly early on and now in terms of just, writing everything down, picking the top 5 things, and then doing the top 5 things. And it is as simple as that. That sounds simple, but it's hard to do, right? There's a lot of ruthless prioritization, but I'd say those 2 things, and starting the day by writing a to-do list after I've worked out, those days generally go well. The days where I don't write a to-do list and don't work out go badly. So
yeah,
try and have less of those and more of the good ones generally if I can.
Yeah, I feel the same way too. Like I've tried like Notion, Todoist, my project management tools. I always like writing it down in a notebook and actually crossing it out. Like always, always.
I'm glad you said the crossing out thing. That's the key, right? Too many people don't cross their stuff off the list, right? It's the most satisfying thing when you go through and you've actually done some stuff too, right? I'm glad you said that.
Awesome. Well, Hugh, thanks for being in the podcast. How can people find you and Ugly Drinks?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you inviting me on. I'm Ugly Hugh, as you say. If you search that, you'll find me on any platform probably. But feel free to reach out to me. I generally will try and, like I said at the beginning, we had a lot of help. We still have a lot of help up the ladder. I'm always willing to help other people too, answer questions. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, probably TikTok somewhere. Snapchat, I definitely won't be checking, but if you want to find me there, I'll be there. And then Ugly Drinks is the same on all of those platforms. If you tweet the team, or if you email hello@uglydrinks.com, generally this stuff will, get an answer very quickly, and we've got a very helpful team. If you go to uglydrinks.com and use Ugly Hugh in caps, or maybe lowercase, it might work too, you'll get a very nice discount for anyone listening as well. I probably will get in trouble for giving that code out, but use that because that's a good one. So if anybody wants to pick up a case or try the new limited editions, give it a go and see what you think, and let me know by one of the social medias I just mentioned.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely leave those links in the description, and definitely appreciate that discount code. So if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, I still have one more question for Hugh here. So head over to YouTube. This section is going to be only on YouTube. So Hugh, my question for you is there a brand that you love or envy, and why?
Oh, such a great question. There's so many. This will be a weird one, but I think a brand that I've admired a lot in the last 12 months is Parade Underwear. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it's, I guess, a Gen Z focused, female focused underwear brand. But they launch new products every single week, and they have a new lookbook every single week or every single couple of weeks. There's a theme. They have clever names, clever colors. The marketing's phenomenal. And the team founding it is like in their early 20s. And I'm just like, the creativity, the coordination, the organization, the visionary leadership is like pretty amazing. And I've kind of watched it from very early on too. And I just think it's amazing. And the way they've engaged with the demographic is phenomenal. So I'd give them a shout out as a startup. In terms of, big business, I love big brands. I love those brands that have been around for 100 years. So, moving to America, just like whether the products are good or not, I've always loved like things like Sour Patch Kids and Reese's and Mountain Dew. The products suck, but the branding and the colors and like the marketing is just phenomenal. And Oreos, these brands, it's like there's just so much history and depth and excitement and like number of variety of SKUs. Like I just always think those things are so it's so amazingly visual. It's a shame the products are so unhealthy for people, but I think the brands are phenomenal.
Yeah, well, that's why we have you. You're doing the complete opposite.
We'll try and take some of those ideas, but then just take all the bad stuff out, right?
Yeah. Well, Hugh, thanks again for being on the podcast.
Love it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the Personal Mastery Podcast. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, please follow this podcast and leave us a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe to this channel for more episodes like this. And as always, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Personal Mastery Podcast.